Welcome to 8 Minutes Chinese. Today, we're unlocking the essential phrases you can use in daily life and master in your next business negotiation.
I have a slightly random question for you to kick things off today.
Okay, lay on me.
What do a Navy SEAL, like a jazz musician, and a Series A startup founder all have in common?
Oh, man. They all operate on very little sleep. And, probably consume an unhealthy amount of caffeine.
I mean, yeah, that is highly probable, but not quite the answer we're looking for today.
Fair enough.
So the fundamental link between all three of them, like the SEAL on a mission, the musician on stage, the founder launching a product, is that they have to completely throw out their plan. The absolute second reality disagrees with it.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And not just throw out, but, invent a new one in real time without freezing up.
Which is, arguably one of the most difficult psychological pivots a human being can make.
Right.
Because neurologically, we crave certainty, right? We spend weeks, sometimes months, building this massive mental model of how an event is going to unfold.
Oh, absolutely.
And when the terrain suddenly shifts, our instinct isn't to adapt. Our instinct is to, force the new reality to fit our old plan.
Yes. We cling to the map even when we're standing in a completely different forest.
Exactly.
And that human friction is exactly why we're pulling from the sources we have today. We are looking at this framework for extreme adaptability pulled straight from ancient China. Specifically, we're doing a deep dive into an excerpt from Sun Tzu's military treatise, The Art of War.
Right, and we're zeroing in on chapter 6 of that text, which is titled Weaknesses and Strengths.
Yeah.
But our mission here isn't, some dry academic history lesson on ancient military formations.
No, not at all.
We're taking this 2.5 millennia old framework and figuring out the actual mechanics of applying it to the modern world, like how you use it in your business, your career, and just your daily life to avoid getting crushed by unexpected changes.
Because whether you're trying to survive a massive career shift or launch a new product or, just get a tricky initiative approved by your boss, a rigid plan usually shatters against changing terrain.
It really does.
So today, we're extracting the ultimate mental model for staying fluid.
And to do that effectively, we need to ground ourselves in the core philosophy first.
Okay, let's unpack this.
We need to look at what Sun Tzu was actually trying to communicate to his generals. Because, they were operating in an era where warfare was highly choreographed.
Right.
And incredibly rigid.
So the core of this entire framework boils down to one specific phrase from the source text. And we want to treat this expression like a core textbook concept, right? We need to pronounce it slowly, syllable by syllable, so you can really hear it.
Yes, absolutely. It's a brilliant piece of tactical instruction. The vocabulary here is incredibly deliberate.
Okay, I'm going to try saying it nice and slow.
Go for it.
Bing wu changxi.
Perfect. Nice and clear.
Shui bu changxi.
Exactly. You really separated the syllables there, which is great. So let's break that down. The first half, Bing wu changxi, starts with Bing, meaning troops or military forces.
Right.
Wu chang translates to without constancy or ever changing. And she refers to a strategic position or a physical formation on a battlefield.
So the literal instruction is that a military force should not hold a permanent, unchanging formation.
Exactly.
Which, to your point, was radical at the time. I mean, you didn't just line up in a square and march forward if the battlefield was like a jagged mountain pass.
Precisely. You don't commit to a shape before you understand the environment. And then Sun Tzu provides this physical metaphor in the second half of the phrase.
Right, the water part.
Yes, shui wu cheng xing. Shui is the word for water.
Yeah.
We see wu cheng again without constancy. And sinxin means shape or form.
So water has no constant shape. Put it all together. And the translation is, troops have no constant formation, water has no constant shape.
Right.
The underlying directive is that you must adapt your tactics to the immediate conditions exactly the way water adapts to whatever container it's poured into.
It's such a perfect visual.
It is, because water never fights the container. It never insists on remaining a cube when it's poured into a cylindrical glass. It just instantly and perfectly maps itself to the physical reality of its environment.
And it does so without losing its essential nature.
Yeah.
That mapping process isn't passive either. Water fills every available gap. It finds the path of least resistance.
Hmm.
In a strategic context, rigidity is a massive vulnerability. When you insist on a constant, predictable formation, you just give the environment or your opponent a fixed target to strike.
It is a phenomenal visual.
Yeah.
But, if we extract it from ancient warfare and boil it down to a slightly brutal modern takeaway, it essentially translates to stay fluid or die.
Huh. I mean, that sounds hyperbolic, but in the context of building a business, it is mathematically accurate.
Let's test that. Let's take Sun Tzu out of ancient China and drop him directly into a modern startup post-mortem.
Oh, I like this.
The sources provide this classic founder's nightmare that perfectly illustrates the danger of a fixed formation.
Yeah, this is where we transition from abstract philosophy into the actual survival mechanics of running a company.
Right. So here's the scenario. Imagine you're a founder. You just spent 6 grueling months raising initial capital, what they call seed money, right? To build a piece of B2B enterprise software. Let's say it's a highly complex inventory management system.
Okay.
Your entire pitch, your financial models, your investor promises, they were all built around selling this expensive software to massive global logistics companies.
That was the plan.
That was the plan. But 6 months after launching, the market just completely rejects it. The massive companies won't even return your calls.
Yeah, the terrain did not match the map.
Right. But then something weird happens. You look at your data, and your only active users, like the only people actually paying for your tool, are independent, side-hustling wedding photographers.
Wow.
Yeah. They're using it to track their camera gear and film stock.
This kind of accidental product market fit happens all the time.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And it creates an agonizing psychological dilemma for the founder. We can actually analyze this through the lens of a rigid founder versus a water-shaped founder.
Okay, let's look at the rigid founder first. They look at those wedding photographers and feel genuine anger.
Yep.
They see those users as a distraction because their mental formation is locked. They're thinking, the board expects enterprise logistics. The marketing copy says enterprise logistics. I am an enterprise software CEO.
They fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy. They've poured so much time, ego, and money into the initial formation that they just refuse to abandon it.
Right.
So they double down. They burn through the rest of their cash, their runway, hiring more expensive sales reps to chase logistics companies that clearly do not want the product.
It's painful to even think about.
It is. They're basically committing their troops to a frontal assault on an impenetrable wall simply because it was drawn on the map.
And the company dies.
Yep.
Now, contrast that with a water-shaped founder. This founder realizes the terrain has shifted. They don't experience ego bruising when they see the photographers. They experience curiosity. They realize the demand is actually over in this entirely different sector.
Which triggers an immediate, real-time redeployment of forces. The water-shaped founder stops fighting the terrain. They stop trying to force the market to behave the way their business plan predicted. Instead, they just flow into the space where movement is actually possible.
They adapt.
Exactly. They rewrite the website copy, they change the pricing model to fit freelancers, and they strip out all the heavy enterprise features to focus on what the photographers actually need.
That is Bingwu Changxi in action. No fixed formation.
Exactly. But, listening to this, a part of me wants to push back on the phrasing a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
If a founder just abandons their entire original vision because a few random photographers started using the app, doesn't staying flexible just sound like corporate speak for we have absolutely no strategy and we're just making it up as we go?
I get why you'd say that.
Yeah.
It's really easy to view adaptability as a lack of discipline. But that fundamentally misunderstands the mechanism of what Sun Tzu is teaching here.
How so?
The instruction isn't to have no strategy. The instruction is to have no permanent strategy.
Ah, the difference being that you aren't married to the specific tactics, but you are married to survival. Exactly. Think about the water analogy again. Water doesn't just wander aimlessly, right?
Right.
It's relentless. It's constantly probing for weaknesses, pushing against boundaries, and finding the microscopic cracks in the obstacle.
Yeah, it always finds a way through.
It's hyper-strategic. It simply refuses to lock itself into a shape that the environment can destroy. You have to hold your operational plans loosely, allow them to dissolve and reform based on market feedback.
Okay, that makes sense. So, assuming our water-shaped founder successfully pivots the product to serve these photographers, they still have a massive hurdle.
Oh, yeah. The investors.
Exactly. They have to go back to their investors and explain why the company is doing something completely different. Which brings us to another scenario from the sources where rigidity kills success, the venture capital pitch room.
Pitch rooms are incredibly hostile environments for rigid plans because they are highly dynamic.
Right.
You aren't just delivering a monologue up there. You are stepping into a complex psychological negotiation.
The sources outline a scenario where a founder takes the exact same presentation, like same slides, same script, same jokes,
Yep.
and pitches it to 3 completely different investment firms. And the pitch bombs across the board.
Yep.
The instinct is to say, well, the business must be bad. But the actual problem is the fixed formation.
It's the ultimate example of Qingshik, constant formation. The founder is presenting a static, predetermined shape to 3 entirely different containers.
Right.
And that fails because venture capitalists are not a monolith. They have different mandates, different backgrounds, different metrics for success.
Here's where it gets really interesting. One investor might be a former accountant who only cares about your unit economics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Meaning they want to know exactly how much profit you make on every single customer after marketing costs. But another investor might be a former engineer who doesn't care about the profit margins yet.
They just want to look under the hood.
Exactly. They just want to dissect your code base and evaluate the technical pedigree of your team. And then a third might only care about the total addressable market. Like they just want to know if the industry is big enough to generate $1 billion return.
And if you bring the exact same shape to all 3 of those distinct environments, you will inevitably clash with at least 2 of them.
Oh, totally.
And likely all 3, because you just aren't speaking their specific language.
The fastest raising founders, like the ones who actually secure the funding, they read the room in the first 90 seconds and actively reshape the emphasis of their story. I affectionately call this process improv with a cap table.
That's a great way to put it. Let's unpack the mechanics of that improvisation, though. Because they aren't just making up numbers. The underlying reality of the business remains identical.
Right. Your capitalization table, your ownership structure, your revenue, your product, none of that changes.
Yeah.
The improvisation is entirely about emphasis and delivery. It's a high-stakes reading of body language. Like, if the founder realizes the investor is getting bored during the technical slides, but starts taking notes when they mention customer acquisition, the water-shaped founder doesn't stubbornly finish the technical slides just because they're next in the deck.
They instantly shift the formation. They skip slide 4, jump to slide 7, and lean heavily into the financial metrics.
They flow into the container.
Yes. If they're talking to an ex-operator or an analytical, numbers-driven firm, they shape the pitch around data, margins, and compound growth.
Right.
But if they're talking to a generalist firm known for backing visionary, mission-driven founders, they shape the exact same pitch around the cultural impact of the product and the long-term vision for the industry.
This is Shuyu Changsing perfectly applied. Same water, different container.
Exactly. And it requires a tremendous amount of situational awareness. You have to actively observe the terrain, the investors' reactions, the questions they interrupt you with, the things they ignore. And you have to mold your presentation around those physical realities. You cannot expect the investor to adapt to your preferred communication style.
But let's step away from the startup ecosystem for a second, because these concepts apply just as ruthlessly to standard corporate environments.
Yeah.
Like, how does a mid-level employee use ancient military strategy?
The mechanics remain identical, but the application shifts inward. So instead of adapting a product or a pitch, you are adapting your professional identity.
The sources bring up a highly relatable career example here. I think it's going to resonate deeply with anyone who has worked in an office for more than a few years.
Oh, for sure.
It's the trap of building your entire personal brand around being the AI guy at your office.
Or, the crypto expert or the social media guru, any label that completely boxes in your utility.
Right. You spend a year learning all the prompt engineering tricks, you automate some basic workflows, and you give presentations on new language models at the all-hands meetings. You become the undisputed AI guy at the company. And for a while, that fixed formation feels incredibly safe. You have a niche. You're the go-to person.
But safety is an illusion when the terrain is shifting, and corporate terrain shifts constantly.
Let's look at the mechanics of how the trap snaps shut. A new CEO comes in, or the macroeconomic environment sours, and budgets get slashed.
Yep.
The strategic priorities of the business pivot overnight from innovation to survival. Suddenly, the company doesn't care about exploring generative AI. What they desperately need is someone to quietly conduct an audit of their software licenses and negotiate cheaper contracts to stop the company from bleeding cash.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, if your entire identity is locked into the formation of the AI guy, you are suddenly a liability.
Wow.
You are misaligned with reality.
You become the general, standing in an empty field, fiercely defending yesterday's hill, completely unaware that the actual battlefield has moved 50 miles down the road.
And this is where we see the physical toll of rigidity. The employee who refuses to adapt will sit in meetings and complain that leadership just doesn't get it.
Oh, I've seen that happen.
Right. They'll keep trying to force AI projects into a budget that no longer exists, fighting the container instead of adapting to it.
So how do you actually execute that pivot without looking like a fraud? Like if you spend a year telling everyone you're the AI guy, you can't just walk in on Monday and announce you're now the software audit guy. Nobody's going to buy that.
No, they wouldn't. But you don't abandon your skills. You reframe the underlying capability.
Okay, explain that.
The water in this scenario is not the specific software you use. The water is your core competency. Your fundamental skills, your analytical thinking, your comfort with complex technology, your ability to streamline processes, those remain constant. The container is simply the current urgent need of the business.
So you flow into the new shape. You go to leadership and say, look, I know how to navigate complex software ecosystems, which is exactly why I was managing the AI rollout. I can use that exact same technical fluency to audit our current software stack and consolidate our licenses.
Yes, you are utilizing the exact same intellect, but deploying it in a completely different formation to serve the immediate reality of the battlefield.
That's brilliant.
Because those who refuse to flow, who demand that the company continue funding their obsolete role, they are the ones who find themselves targeted during layoffs. Sun Tzu warned against demanding that the war adapt to your preferred way of fighting.
Which is a really tough reality to accept. I mean, we spend years crafting resumes, writing cover letters, and optimizing LinkedIn profiles to present ourselves as these very specific, highly specialized shapes.
We do.
Being told to throw that out feels dangerous, which actually brings up a critical counterargument I want to explore. If we are constantly shifting our product features, changing our financial pitches, and completely morphing our professional identities every time the wind blows, don't we just become totally directionless? Is there a risk of overdoing this?
Oh, absolutely. It is the most important nuance in this entire framework. If you misunderstand this next point, you will weaponize Sun Tzu against yourself.
Because there is a massive difference between being adaptable and being chaotic.
Yeah.
Like pivoting your entire business every week just because you read one negative tweet.
Yeah, that isn't strategy. That is panic. Our sources point out that this is the most common misapplication of the philosophy in Silicon Valley.
Interesting.
People confuse formlessness with a lack of purpose. A founder who pivots on every single piece of contradictory feedback isn't acting like water. They're just acting like noise. They're reacting to stimuli without any underlying logic.
So how do we maintain the logic? What prevents a fluid approach from devolving into total chaos?
We have to return to the physical properties of the metaphor. Yes, water has no constant shape. It takes the form of the teapot, the riverbed, the glass.
All right.
But water still obeys gravity.
Oh, wow. It obeys gravity.
Yeah.
Even when it's completely changing its external shape, it's governed by an unbreakable underlying law.
Exactly. It has consistent underlying laws, even while it changes shape. It is always seeking the lowest point of elevation. It is relentlessly flowing downward toward the ocean. That is its ultimate objective. The rock in the stream changes the shape of the water, but it does not change the water's destination. The water simply flows around the rock and continues downward.
So what is gravity in a professional context?
Gravity is your core value system and your ultimate long-term objective. If your ultimate goal is to build a successful software company that streamlines logistics for small businesses, that is your gravity.
That's the ocean you're trying to reach.
Exactly. The constancy must live in your values and your ultimate goal, while the flexibility lives purely in your tactics.
So when the enterprise market rejects you, you don't change your goal of streamlining logistics. You just change the route.
Yeah.
You flow around the enterprise rejection and serve the wedding photographers. The destination is fixed, but the route is fluid.
The distinction lies entirely between the what and the how. What you want to achieve must remain firm. How you achieve it must remain endlessly flexible.
I love that.
If your career goal is to become an indispensable executive leader, that is your gravity. Whether you achieve that by leading an AI initiative during a boom market or by ruthlessly auditing software during a recession, that is simply the shape of the water.
Fixed destination, fluid route. Firm goal, loose plan. That is a crucial balance.
Yeah.
It completely prevents adaptability from turning into chaos.
It forces you to remain completely unattached to the specific vehicle while remaining deeply committed to the destination. Because the vehicle will break down, the path will inevitably be blocked.
So what does this all mean for you? Let's recap the journey of this deep dive. We started with an ancient Chinese military directive, Bingwu Changxi, Shuyu Changxing.
Troops have no constant formation. Water has no constant shape.
We observed how that principle dictates survival in a startup environment, where a rigid founder perishes by defending a broken plan, and a fluid founder thrives by redeploying resources to where the market demand actually exists.
And we analyze the mechanics of the venture capital pitch room, discovering that the most effective communicators treat their narrative like a fluid substance,
Right.
reshaping the emphasis of the exact same data to perfectly fit the psychological container of the specific investor.
We explored the hidden danger of corporate specialization, where tying your entire identity to a fixed role leaves you totally vulnerable to shifting priorities. We saw how reframing your core competencies allows you to flow into whatever shapes the organization desperately needs.
But most critically, we established the absolute necessity of gravity. We learned that being fluid does not mean being directionless.
No.
You are not noise, you are water. You still operate under fundamental laws. You hold your ultimate objectives with an iron grip, but you treat your daily plans as disposable rough drafts.
Exactly. Same water, entirely different container. Same overarching goal, entirely different route.
Which brings us to a final provocation, a thought I want you to sit with after this deep dive is over.
I'm ready?
Since we know that water naturally, effortlessly, and immediately adapts to the shape of whatever container it finds itself in, I want you to take a hard, highly critical look at the containers you are building for yourself right now.
The structures of your daily life.
Your daily habits, your workplace culture, the unspoken rules of your social circles. Look closely at the environment you exist in for 8 to 10 hours a day. Are those containers forcing you into a rigid, inflexible, highly stressed shape?
Because if the container is rigid, you'll eventually freeze to match it.
Exactly. You have to ask yourself, have you defaulted into an environment that demands constant formation? Or are you actively designing a life, a career, and a daily routine that gives you the physical and mental freedom to flow toward where your energy, your curiosity, and your actual skills are needed most?
Because reality does not care about your plan. Reality does not care about the map you drew yesterday. When the terrain changes, you only have 2 choices. You can stubbornly defend your original formation and shatter. Or you can flow. Keep your gravity, but change your shape.
Hope you loved today's 8-minute upgrade. Don't forget to subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time.